Let's continue on now with our overview of the user interface in 3D Coat. Before I go on to the materials and mask as well as the brushes palettes, I want to touch on a few things in the layer panel that I didn't cover previously, and that is the right-click menu on the layer. You have a host of options here that are also reflected in the menu items, as well as your icons at the bottom. Create a new layer, trash can to delete a layer, merge a layer down, duplicate a layer. You can move the layer up and down in the stack. You can also do the same thing here by grabbing this little move icon and now moving it. Again, you can merge up, merge down, merge visible. You can copy channels, flip layer and duplicate, freeze painted pixels, freeze transparent pixels, apply layer mask. In the blending panel, it's actually a companion of the layer panel. It allows you to modulate the depth, okay, just as you would here. You can increase this on the fly, and you're not stuck with just 1 to 100. You can go well above 100 if you need. Okay, you also have some options here to add depth, subtract depth, choose maximum depth, magnify, or suppress depth. Again, you have your transfer or blending modes. Some of these are relatively new, such as use as emissive, which is a glow essentially. Use specular color. So essentially what you would do with specular color is you would paint the color that you want and then come over and change the blending mode to use as specular color. So it will now be a specular channel, but it will apply that color tint to it as well. So okay, now let's go back to the blending panel, and same thing with the specularity. You can modulate it up and down. If you are a little bit too strong on your specularity in a given area and you want to dial it back down, you can do that here, or you can dial it up if you don't have enough. Okay, you can adjust the specularity, brightness on a layer, and whatnot. So all of this is contingent upon the layer that you have selected. Okay, it's not a global setting. Okay, so again, if you have the tool options panel open here in your viewport, you'll notice that when you click on certain tools, it will change contextually. Okay, got a little delay here. Maybe autosave. Okay, so we'll try this again. If I choose the stamp tool, you can see how it will change contextually. The fill tool, and so on. Alright, and the picker tool, this primarily will apply to the paint room. That way you can select colors. You can also use image picker. I'm going to go to select. Okay, so now once I have this selected, I can zoom, retarget to fit in the panel. If I zoom in on an area, I can then pan around. I can also middle mouse click to pan as well. I can adjust the hue and saturation of the color that I've picked. So if I choose this one, I can crank the saturation up. And if I have multiple pictures, I can remove one. If I hover over it, you can see a bigger thumbnail. And you can dock this wherever you like if you want a bigger image. Okay. And I can take whatever colors I want and store them in a color palette. You have a little drop list here. couple different palettes to choose from. Okay, and you can select or store what's in the foreground. Alright, and if I create a number of these, I can always save it out and come back to it if I need. Alright, and the preset panel we will cover in another video. Okay, so that should cover all of our panels in the workspace. So now let's get to the good stuff. Brushes panel. If I go to folder and default, this is what you'll see when you first load 3D Coat. It's not a massive selection, but you can go to 3D Coat's website. I'll navigate there now. So once you're at the main page here, you can go to Download, Resources. Okay, you have brushes, masks, materials, shaders, and other. Okay, and you can also share by going to the forums. Once you have signed in or created an account and signed in, you can navigate toward the bottom. There will be an exchange section where you have additional sharing options as well. Okay, so let's go back to 3D Coat. And if you have folders where you've stored brush alphas, you can add a new folder, okay, and create new brushes or load some new ones in. You can add an existing folder, and this will point to something you already have stored. For example, if I have a large collection of brush alphas that I've gotten off the internet, that I've downloaded from various sources from the internet, you can just point to it. In this case, this one is already pointed there. You can also load in any of your brushes from Photoshop, and 3D Coat will automatically recognize it. So your ABR is the extension of your Photoshop brushes. You can also point to that same directory where you have brushes stored for Photoshop, okay, and it will bring those in. You can create new alphas or profiles, shape profiles, creating new points. You can right click to create more smoothing, right click again to make it sharp, and right click a third time to restore it to its normal state. Okay, and let's say if I have a third one and I don't want this anymore, I can just drag it to the other and let go, and it's gone. Okay. Okay, and now you can see the new brush alpha here. I can right click and go back and edit a curve at any point in time. Okay, and you can do the same thing that we showed earlier about using objects, 3D objects, to create a new brush. So when you click New, Open Texture File, OBJ. Okay, so as you find an OBJ file, you can create a brush from that. We showed that in the previous video. So you can do that with brushes, strips, and so on. And this will also work not only in the paint room but also in the voxel sculpting room as well. So let's go ahead and proceed to masks. So if you're in another application where you're used to working with stencils, this is effectively the same. If I click on one, you can see basically an overlay. I can paint with this overlay either in the 3D viewport or in the 2D texture editor. And I have a little preview panel here that I can move around if I like. And I can scale it, rotate it, skew it if I need. I can reset that to its standard aspect ratio. Okay, and can hide it. Auto means it'll show it until I start brushing with it. So let's, with the depth channel turned on, I'm going to create a new layer, and this is fine. I'll just use this. Use a regular brush. Scale this down. I'll work in the 3D viewport, and then I'll paint one here as well. Okay, you can middle mouse click and it will move both the mask and your texture space. If you hold the Alt key, okay, and right click and drag left and right, it will zoom both at the same time. Okay, if you middle mouse click over an item like this, both will move, but if you're going to zoom, you do need to hold the Alt key. So let's go ahead and move this into place. And I could hit my 5 key to toggle to orthographic view, or click this little icon. I'll hit 5 on my number pad. And let's see, front. And I can see what view I'm in the upper right hand corner here. So, you can see how that works. Now I can hide it and examine what I've worked on. If I go to normals, I can now see where that applied it. Okay. Now I'm going to unhide that, move this back into place, and let's find another one. Okay, again, if I Alt key and right click and drag left and right, it will maintain the size as I'm zooming in. And that's what auto does. It moves it out of your way while you're painting, and as soon as you let up, it will show you what you're working on. Okay, if you leave shown, you want to go ahead and undo. And shown will let you see the overlay while you're painting. Hold the shift key to smooth this out in the center if I want. Okay, and I can close it there or in the upper right hand corner. I'm going to turn my 3D lock off and take a look. Okay, so if I have a little artifact like this I want to get rid of, all I have to do is go to my eraser, use regular brush type. I'm going to turn ignore back faces off, and there you have it. It restores it to its default level. Okay, so there you have it. You can do quite a bit of sculpting within the paint room. Probably didn't know that, did you? Well, now you do. So let's go ahead and go on to materials. I'm going to choose a folder with some grunge. And actually, I'm going to apply this little decal here. I'm going to reset so as I know for sure that it's default aspect ratio. And if I want, I can distort this image to fit. It works better for working with facial textures and so on. But click on this little drop list here and distort image. And you can always save this distortion so you can come back to it later and reload it if you want. Okay, and you can even paint over an image if you like. That way, as you're applying it as a mask, you can paint some extra details and so on. Right, so enough talk, more work. Here we go. I'm going to I'll close that for now, zoom out, and I'm going to paint that on the back side here. Turn my perspective back on with the 5 key on the number pad and zoom in. Click my material. Again, if I want to scale it up, I can Alt-click while hold down the Alt key while right-clicking and dragging left and right to zoom in. Okay, I could use a brush on this. And if I want to apply a color tint, okay, I would want to select that before painting. Okay, so if I start painting with it, it's going to apply this color tint to this. If I do not want any color tint, I need to choose a white color. Okay, that way 3D Coat will not apply any tint to it whatsoever. Okay, now I can hit my E key instead of having to continually reach up here. I'm going to hit my E key and select the freeform lasso. I'm going to make sure that I have color only turned on because that's all I want. And Shazam. There we have it. Now, if this layer had some depth, like this one does, I'm going to increase the size of the thumbnail by clicking this drop list and choosing huge. I'm going to navigate to the one I've chosen. It's highlighted somewhat. You can see a little purple and green dot which mirrors what you see up here. It's telling me that it has, if I right click and edit that material, when you click new, this is what you'll get. You'll get a dialog to add depth, color, and specularity maps if you have separate ones. You can also, if all you have is a color map, 3D Coat will basically create a grayscale version of that if you apply the same map in the depth texture here. Okay, so I have one that already has a bump map for this. I'm going to hit OK. And so, with that clicked, and with depth chosen, actually I'll turn color on as well, so you can work simultaneously with all three if you want: depth, color, and specularity. So I'll go ahead and choose a regular brush, and I want to make sure I do not have masks or anything else before I do this. Okay, I'm going to choose a regular brush alpha. Okay. I can go to normal map and examine how it looks if it's a little too rough, and try to modify that somewhat. And it all depends on the quality of the texture that you have. Obviously, the higher the resolution on your texture map, the better quality of a result you'll get. Also, it depends on the size of your UV map. So if it's only 512 or 1K, you may not get all that great of a result here. So it just depends on what your needs are and so on. Okay, so I think that demonstrates that well enough. So I'll close this out. And we have covered all three of these individual palettes. Again, you can right click on any one of these, delete a brush, save to Photoshop file or TIFF, load from a Photoshop file, add in an external editor, or I'm sorry, edit an external editor, and edit as a 16-bit TIFF, and so on. Okay, so in the next video we are going to cover the E panel, because this is where a lot of the magic happens, no matter what room you're in 3D Coat. Alright, so stay tuned.